Picture this. You're standing in ancient Rome, and a foreman points at a canyon and says, "We're bringing water across that." No engines, no steel, no cement trucks. And yet, a few years later, an aqueduct is carrying fresh water for miles, quietly, relentlessly, on stone arches that still cast shadows today. So how did the Romans actually construct buildings back then? The secret isn't one magic trick. It's a system. Materials they mastered, shapes they trusted, and an organization of labor that ran like a living machine. Start with the foundation, what they built with. Romans used stone, brick, timber, and, most famously, Roman concrete. Their concrete wasn't the same as modern Portland cement, but it had a genius ingredient: volcanic ash, often called pozzolana. Mixed with lime and rubble, it created a material that could harden even in damp conditions, and in some cases became more durable over time. That meant Romans could fill thick walls, cast massive piers, and shape structures quickly compared to carving everything from solid stone. Next comes the shape that made Rome's skyline possible: the arch. A flat stone beam across two columns cracks under heavy weight, but an arch turns weight into compression, pushing forces down and outward. Romans learned to control that outward push with thick walls, buttressing, or by repeating arches into arcades. Stack those ideas forward, and you get vaults, like a long arch stretched into a tunnel, and domes, which are basically arches rotated into a circle. But you can't just make an arch in midair. Romans built arches using wooden centering, a temporary wooden frame shaped like the arch. Workers placed wedge-shaped stones, voussoirs, on the frame from both sides toward the middle. The final stone, the keystone, locked everything into place. Then they removed the wood, and the arch held itself. It's one of the most satisfying construction moments in history. Take away the support, and the structure survives. Now imagine repeating that process at massive scale. The Colosseum, for example, is a rhythm of arches and corridors, designed not only to stand, but to move crowds efficiently. And it wasn't built by random labor. Rome had specialized roles: surveyors to mark levels and lines, quarry workers to cut stone, brickmakers, carpenters for scaffolding, and crews trained to mix and pour concrete in layers. How did they lift and move heavy materials without modern machines? Simple physics, applied obsessively. Levers, rollers, ramps, and cranes, wooden cranes powered by teams pulling ropes or walking inside tread wheels like human hamsters. With pulley systems, a smaller force could lift a much heavier load. Stone blocks traveled on sledges, carts, and sometimes boats, because moving weight by water was far easier than hauling it over rough land. Precision mattered too. Roman surveyors used tools like the groma to set right angles, and the chorobates, a long leveling device, to keep aqueduct channels on an incredibly gentle, consistent slope. Aqueducts weren't just tall bridges. Most of the water ran in covered channels. The famous arches appeared only where valleys demanded them. The achievement wasn't height, it was control. And then there's the Pantheon, a dome so wide it still feels impossible. The Romans managed it with smart mass reduction. The dome is thick at the base and thinner near the top. The concrete mix likely changed too: heavier aggregate low down, lighter materials higher up. Inside, those recessed coffers aren't just decoration. They reduce weight while keeping rigidity. At the center, the oculus, an open circle, removes the most difficult, heaviest part of the dome, and it turns the building into a machine for light. But behind every monument is the real Roman superpower: logistics. Quarries, kilns, roads, supply depots, contracts, foremen, schedules. Standardized bricks and repeated building methods. A construction site was a chain. If timber didn't arrive, scaffolds stopped. If lime didn't arrive, concrete stopped. Rome learned to keep the chain moving. So when you ask, how did Romans construct buildings back then? The honest answer is, they built like modern engineers, just with different tools. They used durable materials, relied on strong forms like arches and domes, and combined human labor with mechanical advantage: pulleys, cranes, ramps. Then scaled it all with ruthless planning. That's why, 2,000 years later, their buildings don't feel like ruins. They feel like messages. Proof that with the right materials, the right geometry, and a system that never stops, you can build something that outlives an empire.